As someone who doesn't know you at all, who are you, Adam Fawer? I think I'm a storyteller. I've always loved listening to stories, absorbing stories through movies and TVs and books. And in every job I've had outside of being an author, I've turned it into a storytelling type profession. And now I'm really happy that I'm able to just write and focus on telling great stories.
Bilmiyorum, Adam Fawer adını duyanınız var mı? Size iki kitabını göstersem belki hatırlarsınız. Birisi Olasılıksız, ikincisi de Empati. Ben ikisini de okudum. Üstelik bir tek ben okumadım. Gördüğünüz bütün bu kitapları sadece bizim ekibimiz evden getirttiler. Kimisi gitti yeni kitap aldı. Hepsini Adam Fawer'a imzalatmak istiyorlar.
The first trip in 2009, we started in Istanbul and we flew to Ankara and then flew back. So it was just two cities. It was amazing. I was thrilled to be here, but it still hadn't kicked in that I was well known. And at the time, it had been just 3 years since my first book had come out, and maybe 2 years since my second book had come out. Now it's been nearly 20 years since my first book was published. It's just not going to be the same. There's no way that it's going to be as good as it was before. Certainly no way it could possibly exceed that trip.
Merhaba.
Merhaba. Crowds have been much larger. The reaction of my fans is even more powerful. Before, they had read my book, and now they've read my book 2 or 3 times. And then, first day we drove 5 hours to Ankara, Eskişehir, Bursa, and Izmir before we came back to Istanbul. The readers were so excited that I was coming to them. And they felt like I had honored them by showing up to their favorite bookstore. But honestly, I felt like they honored me by also showing up to that bookstore and waiting in line for hours. Meeting all these fans, and some are quite young. Again, I spoke at Bilkent University, and so I have a lot of 18, 19-year-old fans who had read my book 6 or 7 years earlier. But also I have these adult fans who've read my book 15 years earlier, nearly 20 years earlier.
Oh my gosh, old. Wow.
So it's been stunning.
Nasılsınız? Nazlı ben. Adam.
Last time I did a radio interview and a lot of print interviews and TV interviews. And this time, it's been website interviews and a lot of interviews for YouTube shows. So the media is different.
Hoş geldiniz. Buyurunuz. Türkiye'ye programımıza hoş geldiniz.
Adam Fawer bugün bizlerle.
Edin Bey hoş geldiniz. Sadece kendi merak ettiklerimi soruyorum.
Merhaba arkadaşlar, Ay'daki Adam'da bugün gerçekten özel bir konuğumuz var. Meşhur Adam Fawer.
Welcome. Thank you.
You are here in Turkey for your last book.
Hopefully not the last.
Hopefully not the last.
Nasıl bu yeteneğinizi keşfettiniz? İyi yazdığınızı.
It's not so much that I think I discovered the talent. When I was younger, I got very sick and lost all the vision in my left eye and a lot of the vision in my right eye.
Babam benim için sesli kitaplar seçmişti ve babamın tarzı sebebiyle hepsi yetişkinler için bilim kurgu eserleriydi.
He picked out books by Stephen King or Isaac Asimov or Frank Herbert or Robert A. Heinlein.
Tabii hasta olmadan önce belki polis memuru olurum, belki itfaiyeci olurum diye düşünüyordum ama göremediğiniz zaman bunları yapamıyorsunuz. Ama tabii ki kahramanlarım yazarlar oldu.
I dedicated improbable to my father. When you sign the book, you turn the page to go to the right page. And I hadn't seen my father's name in print in probably 20 years. You know, I just appreciate like all the Turkish people that like, they keep him alive in a way.
Can I shake your hand?
Thank you too, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, so it's Maharab.
Yeah,
Teşekkürler.
wonderful.
And Galegala. This crazy person was teaching me the other day. It was like, sizi
Sizi seviyorum.
seviyorum.
Ya sizi seviyorum.
Seviyorum.
Yeah.
Türkiye.
I wrote my first book in 2002, got published in the US in 2005, and then got published in Turkey in 2006. So meanwhile, by the time it was published in Turkey, and my first book was published in 20 languages, and my second, 3 languages. My big countries, Germany, Japan, and Turkey. And that's it. When I started writing, I was single. And by the time my second book came out, married, 2 boys, bought a place in Brooklyn. So suddenly I could not afford to be a writer anymore. And I thought that dream was dead. It was gone. So I went back to my normal life, which was working in startups, tech startups. A couple years went by and I would get
These calls from Turkey. I knew it was Egemen because I don't know anybody in Turkey besides Egemen. So I knew it was him, and I didn't answer the call. And the reason I didn't answer the call is because what he wanted was like, champ, you got to write more books. People are waiting for you. And I didn't want to have that conversation because in my mind, I was done writing. I wasn't going to write any more books. It was over for me. I had tried that. I had some success, ended in failure. I had family now that I had to take care of. I was moving on.
And so I stopped taking his calls.
Wow.
And I would just let the calls go to voicemail. And it was 2009, I think it was September, where I had finished one job and I had 1 month to do nothing. So I get a call.
And I looked at my phone and it was from Washington, D.C. And I answered it and they said, is this Adam Fawer? And I said, yes. And they said, this is so-and-so from the United States State Department. So the first thing she says is, your Turkish publisher is trying to contact you. And I said, can I ask why you care? And she says, every year the United States flies one American author over to Turkey as a cultural emissary. This year they really want it to be you. And I was blown away. It was going to be a 9-day trip they wanted, and it was going to start in 2 weeks. So it was perfectly timed in that 1 month period where I wasn't going to be working anyway. And I didn't have any money at the time. And I said, what is this gonna cost? And she was like, nothing, we'll pay for all the bills. And I was like, oh my God. She said, the only problem is we can't fly you first class. And I said, that's fine, coach is fine.
When I get to the hotel, the Radisson in Istanbul, the bellman who was carrying my bags kept looking back at me, and it was like a little bit weird. And then Egemen says, it's because he knows who you are? It's because he's read your books? I was like, no.
And basically Egemen had asked him, do you know who this is? And he was like, yes, of course, it's Adam Fawer. And he said, have you read his books? And he said, yes, of course, both of them.
And I thought, that's not really real, or maybe he's just being polite.
Yeah.
And then the next day I went to the Istanbul Book Fair, and I was the keynote speaker. First, they bring me into this giant room, and they said, this is where you're going to be speaking. And I had my 2 best friends come with me because I was like, if it's awesome, it'll be great. And if it's terrible, it'll be a funny story, right? And so when I'm looking at the room and I'm looking at my friends, and I was like, I'm going to be so embarrassed when nobody shows up.
Yeah.
And then I came out and the room's like standing room only. And that's when I like really realized like, oh, I'm actually really popular here.
Why are you so popular in Turkey? Do you have any explanation for that, or is it just by pure coincidence?
That is a question I get a lot. I have various theories on that. I have a new theory that I've developed over the last few days, reading Your Peace Machine and watching a little of Hot Skull and Kubra. And my new theory is that it seems like a lot of Turkish people are really captivated by the thought of fate and destiny. And what is it, Kadash? So that's theory one.
But one of the things that happened was I had a publisher who really, really, really believed in my book.
So it's the same thing like startups.
You need somebody to believe in it and to have a vision and to push. The editor-in-chief of my publisher, April Publishing, fantastic publisher, and his name is Egeman. And he absolutely believed in my book and released it with a green cover, and it didn't sell. And then he said, I'm gonna change the cover and keep working until it really gets through to the Turkish people, because he believed in it so much. So I think that's part of it.
My third theory, which is a little bit of a joke, a little bit not, I sort of have like some Turkish sensibilities. Like I wrote Oz, it's a violent fairy tale. And she was like, all of our fairy tales in Turkey are violent. And people like that. And, or I have sort of like a sarcastic sense of humor. She said it like really worked with Turkish people. I felt a real kinship and connection with all the fans I've met. And so I said, I'm American, but I'm Turkish.
And my last theory is just that Turkish readers are the smartest readers in the world.
Teşekkür ederiz.
Wow, look at him.
Look at you. Look at you.
Welcome, welcome. There are already some people.
Oh,
Yeah, great.
Özgür is also one of our artists today.
Hi, great to meet you.
Evet arkadaşlar, bugün Arthur'un çok önemli bir günü. Burada olmak benim için de çok keyifli. Başından sonuna kadar bütün yolculukta ben de vardım. Ben gerisini biliyorum baştan sona. O yüzden bütün ekip arkadaşlarımızın hepsine buradan sonsuz teşekkür ediyorum. Emeğe geçen herkese. Sevgili Edebiyat'ın buraya geldi. Orası tekrar programı açıyorum. Son şarkılarına.
My books have been out in Turkey almost 20 years. They've inspired people to go into and study science, to study physics, to study data analysis, to study statistics. One woman got into science and now she's a doctor. I can be a little pessimistic sometimes or a little grim. And like at one point I thought like, I can die now. Like I have like a legacy, like I've touched and impacted the world in a way here in Turkey that my influence will be felt for years, generations. I don't know, and so it's crazy.